All right, Shabbat Shalom. We are looking this week into our Torah portion, Vayigash. Vayigash, and it means in the Hebrew to draw close, to draw close. And it comes to us from Bereshit, Genesis chapter 44 and verse 18, and it extends through chapter 44, verse 27. Vayigash, to draw close. Of course, it comes from Nagash. Nagash, spelt Nun Gimel Shin. And it's really speaking about a son is deliberately walking towards something. A son is deliberately walking towards something. We live in a world, brethren, where things aren't coincidence in our life as believers. You have got to believe, I have got to believe that the Son is deliberately walking towards something. And do you know what that is? It's the restoration of all Israel. And that's the world and the life and the generations that we have been born into. It's not happenstance, it's not coincidence, but the Son is walking towards something, and that's you. That's restoration. Coming out of where you have been enslaved. He has come to free us all and bring us into something amazing, and it is deliberate, it is intentional, and it is pressing. It is pressing. What we're going to see in our text today, let me give you a brief overview. You see in Bereshit, Genesis chapter 44, you see Joseph's cup. That cup which really begins this trial. But our text starts in the 18th verse when Judah begins to intercede for Benjamin. And it's Judah's intercession that brings about the revelation of Joseph. And in chapter 5, Joseph is revealed to his brothers. It's about deliberately walking towards something, the revelation. Judah represents the house of Judah. Judah stands before the Father as a guarantee until all Israel returns. Judah is going to be held responsible today and is held responsible in our text for holding the exiles back from the return. Because this text literally is talking about Joseph and the tribes of Jacob or Israel. And that they have been out in the exile, and Joseph is the one that when he is revealed, they all come together. So we have to look at this today in a tribal realm. That Yeshua ben Joseph, Yeshua the son of Joseph, he is going to reveal himself to who? To who? To Judah, because Judah is going to come seeking. And then that begins a process of restoring those exiles and bringing them back. So we have to look at it with a big tribal picture, understanding that there's 12 tribes of Israel, that the tribes were scattered into the nations, and that Joseph is a picture of Yeshua because it's Yeshua ben Joseph, which of course in Jewish circles speaks of Mashiach, speaks of Messiah. So what we're going to see is Judah is held responsible, is he not? Judah is held responsible for holding the exiles back from return. And today Judah's held responsible too. Because you've got people like, I'm trying to think of his name now, a big Christian teacher, and he partners up with Judaism, and thank you, John Hagee, and they go into the nations, and it's about returning the Jews to the land of Israel. That's called false restoration. Because it's only when Judah legitimately comes before Yosef, or Mashiach ben Yosef, that it is the restoration of not one tribe, but all 12 tribes to the land. So John Hagee is partnering in false restoration. Of course, it's very popular in the Christian Zionist movement, but it is not true. Because true restoration is going out searching for that which is lost, that which is cast away, called the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That's true restoration. And true restoration can only happen around Joseph, Mashiach ben Joseph. So Judah is held responsible for holding the exiles back from the return. Judah has to come to the point when he's willing to take the punishment for the brothers, including Benjamin. Judah needs to be broken so that he embodies the heart of Mashiach. That's the realm that we're living in. Judah needs to be broken so that he embodies the heart of Mashiach. Is it possible? Is it possible that there could be some stirring in the Middle East that could cause a breaking of Judah? Is it possible? Does Yahweh work in our lives to break us so that he can build us back up? Judah needs to be broken so that he embodies the heart of Mashiach, ready to give his life for the love of the Father. Because this text is all about the love of the Father. It's the love of the Father that causes Judah to repent. It's the love of the Father that causes Joseph to reveal himself. It's all centered about the love of the Father. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. It's about the love of the Father. But remember, it's Joseph's manner that causes Judah to draw close. And the exiles, you and I, we're known as Joseph as well, because we are a multicolored coat, scattered, torn, and shredded out into the nations. And that has to be restored. Judah says in verse 20 of our text, and his brother is dead. That's Judah's testimony. Judah stands before Joseph, speaking of Benjamin, and what does he say? And his brother is dead. Speaking of Joseph. And his brother is dead. This is exactly how Judaism refers to Yeshua ben Joseph. Right? Even though they know the record of his resurrection and the gospel to the world, he's dead. The man is dead. They don't even say his name. And until that testimony changes, we've got problems. And if anyone tries to sell you restoration without this change, don't buy it. Because that's what they're selling, and I'm not standing for it. Even though they put the screws to me. Right? It's amazing. 15 times in our Torah text, Judah mentions his father. 15 times in the text. It's got to be the love of the Father, bros. It's got to be the love of the Father that motivates us. It is so big. I say a prayer every morning before my feet hit the deck when I get out of bed. And it is the love of the Father that motivates me just before my feet touch the floor. I will not get out of bed. I mean, it's my little, all right, but that's what I do. Because you know what? This life that we live, it is the love of the Father. If I don't have the love of the Father, slay me in my bed. I don't want to get up. That is the only thing that motivates me to get out of bed in the morning. I'm telling you the truth. The only thing, the first thing that has to come out of my mouth every morning is my declaration personally, my prayer to the love of the Father. And that's what we see right here. 15 times in our Torah text, Judah mentions his Abba. Judah's judgment and rejection of the father's son caused what? Judah's rejection of the father's son caused great grief and sorrow to the father. For the love of the father, Judah makes repentance, and then, when? Then Joseph reveals himself. Then Joseph reveals himself. Yeshua ben Joseph. See, we're living the days of Joseph. We truly are living in the days of Joseph. But we are living in the days of war and appeasement. We are living in the days of war and appeasement. You see, Judah approached Joseph with 3 different tactics. First, war, then appeasement, and finally prayer. And we're living right now where Judah is approaching the nations with what? 1 minute it's war, the next minute it's appeasement. Then it vacillates back to war, and then it's appeasement. But do we see prayer? Have we got to that stage yet? We have not. That's the stage that we're looking for. We're looking for that prophetic change. So Judah approaches Joseph with 3 different tactics: war, appeasement, and prayer. And today Judah vacillates back and forth between 2 opinions: war and appeasement. And it will only be, I believe, after the utter crushing defeat that Judah will fall to his knees and come in prayer. Only after an utter crushing defeat, war, that Judah will fall to his knees and come in prayer. And then there's the revelation of Yeshua. The revelation of Yeshua ben Joseph. You see, Judah believes he's standing before a Gentile king, when in reality he's standing before his own brother. And you got all these Mickey Mouses running around with their Christmas trees and all of this nonsense, and it's like, well, yeah, we've got ourselves a Gentile king. It's called misrepresenting the gospel. You see, if we were representing him as he truly is, then maybe Judah would realize that he is standing before his own brother. But you dress him up like a pagan, you put a tree, and he doesn't look like his brother at all, does he? He looks like Zathpananeah. He looks like some Egyptian king, some pagan prince. You see, this is all the realm that we live in. And it's not okay to misrepresent the gospel. It's just not okay. Because then you are going to be held accountable for standing in the way of restoration of the kingdom of Israel. And that's the first question that the disciples asked of Yeshua. And you're going to stand in front of that? When, Master, will you restore the kingdom to Israel? Well, hang on a minute. First of all, let's set that aside, because I've got more important business to do. It's Christmas trees, shopping, and nonsense. Really? It's a serious matter. But you know what? You throw your pearls before swine, people don't care. They don't care. They don't care. It's not important. Well, it is to us. Praise Yahweh, it is to us. So Judah believes he's standing before a Gentile king, when in reality, he's standing before his own brother. And when Judah shows true repentance for the love of the Father, then Yeshua, the son of Joseph, will reveal himself. And it's during a time of famine and a time of trouble that Joseph reveals himself. And when he does, it's instantaneous. It's an instantaneous paradigm shift. You see, and that's the thing that the world would try and have you and I believe, that today, tomorrow will be as today. and next week will be as this week, and that nothing changes, everything's secure, and everything's hunky-dory. But in the biblical realm of faith, things change instantaneously, and your world is upside down, and you cannot recover, because it is such a shattering change that you will have fear and trembling to your very, very inner being. And that's how the world's going to happen. When this change happens instantaneous, they won't be able to shift with the change. You and I have to be prepared and ready, because it's coming. When the revelation comes, it's instantaneous. 1 minute they're standing before a stranger and they think that they're somewhat okay. The next minute, all of a sudden, all of their murderous treachery is right before their face, and their world changes. Instantaneously. Instantaneously. Revealing ourselves to Judah is a painful experience, if you're honest. And there's the rub. You see, when Joseph revealed himself to Judah, was it a painful experience? Oh, it was a painful experience, believe me. Because I've sat with Orthodox rabbis. I've sat with Reform rabbis. I've sat with conservative rabbis. And I've explained to them, I'm Joseph. We've been scattered into the nations. And you know what? Rejection hurts. It's hard. It's hard and it's painful. It's painful. But it's the true calling. It's the true calling. On the other hand, I know firsthand of other popular ministries out there where teachers have gone to yeshiva in Jerusalem and studied Talmud, and they've hidden their light under the basket so that they could get into yeshiva and study Talmud. And nobody knew that they were believers in Yeshua. That's not authentic. That's disingenuous. That's misrepresentation. I would rather deal with the pain and the rejection. I once walked up to a synagogue, a Jewish synagogue, and before I even got in the door, I opened the door of my car, I got out, and I saw people going up the stairs, and do you know what I said? What happened to Yeshua? I hadn't even got inside the door, and do you know what they said to me? You can't talk about that here. Well, where can you talk about it then? And there's rejection and pain. But you know what? That is the calling. If we're going to exalt him, we have to exalt him regardless of what pain is caused to you. And I've been the recipient of a lot of pain and rejection based upon the testimony of Yeshua. But I'm not going to go like other people and go to a yeshiva and study Talmud and pretend that I'm a Jew when I'm not, and be quiet about the one that saved me. Because he says, if you do not proclaim him before men, then he will not proclaim you before the Father. You see, it's all going to come to the light. It's all going to come to the light. Don't draw back from the pain of ministry. Be strong, be courageous, and speak out against those who say they're Jews and who are not. Those who use genealogy to gain position over us and title over us in the pulpit. No. Look at what it says in chapter 45 and the 6th verse. For these 2 years have famine been in the land, and yet there are still 5 more years in which there shall be neither plowing or harvest. So what we've got right now is 2 and 5, 2 and 5. That's talking about extending grace. And that's the days that we're living in. Because time, I think, is way, way short. And the only reason that he has not revealed himself is because it's going to be extremely painful. It's going to be in a time of famine and great tribulation. And the reason he hasn't revealed himself right now, is because of what? He's extending grace. 2 and 5 is extending grace. We've got 2 fishes and 5 loaves, and he extends some serious grace, does he not? And all of a sudden, 5,000 people get fed. And when you go into the temple, you've got 2 pillars. And its capitals are what? 5 cubits each. And he extends grace so that you can come in before his very, very presence. Because the only way you're ever going to get into the true temple is through the revelation of Joseph. It's not going to be some false restoration. That's why the Melchizedek priesthood is so important, because it's always centered around the true revelation of the priesthood of Yeshua. It's grounding, it's solid, and it's extending grace to you and I, that we're even able to see this. It's extending grace. Look at the 22nd verse of chapter 45. Now, to all of them, Joseph, he gave each man changes of clothing. But to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothing. What's going on here? That's not fair. Oh, I hear that so often. Let's get this straight. The fairness doctrine is from hell. I'm not fair. I don't act fairly, and I do not treat people fairly. Never will. Let's understand that. I tell my children that, don't even. Fairness is from hell. Okay? That's not fair. Good. Because if life was fair, I'd be burning in hell. Right? Thank Yahweh, life isn't fair. Seriously. It's the militant secularism of society where everything has to be fair. You want fair? See? It gets me crazy. To all of them he gave each man changes of clothing, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of clothing. And to his Abba he sent the following: 10 donkeys loaded with the tove things of Mitzrayim, and 10 female donkeys loaded with corn and lechem, bread, and food for his Abba by the way. So he sent his brothers away, and they departed. And he said to them, don't start quarreling along the way. Because you know, well, he got more stuff than me. You see, silver is man's currency. Silver is the currency of redemption. 300 is numeric for ransom, or kippur, a covering. And 5, like we said, it's favor, grace, and of course, Torah. Therefore, what you see here is that the atonement price and Torah were given to who? Benjamin. The atonement price and Torah were given to Benjamin. So what's that mean? Standing before Joseph, and that's of course a picture of Yeshua, son of Joseph, only 1 out of 10 is completely restored. Only 1 out of 10 is completely restored. Benjamin was the only one that was completely restored by the redemption money and the price, which was covenant Torah. The other 9 brothers, they weren't restored. It was a false restoration, was it not? You see, only 1 out of 10 is completely restored. 10 aren't full family. They're half brothers. Though they've changed garments, their sins are forgiven. They're not full brothers possessing all that the son of Joseph has for them. Right? You and I need to possess everything that the son of Joseph has for us, that Joseph has for us. They lack the covering that living by the grace of covenant Torah brings. You see, you've only got covering if you're under covenant Torah. And they lack it. They stand without the wedding garments that came through the washing of the Torah through grace. Restoration is complete for only 1 in 10, and there's your Christian church paradigm. We need to be perfect, complete, and fully restored as our Abba in heaven is perfect. You see, in Bereshit, Genesis chapter 17, to Abraham, Yahweh said, I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be perfect. You see, you can only be perfect standing. You can only be perfect in standing if it's under the Melchizedek covenant of Torah. Then you're covered by the work of Joseph. You're covered by the price of redemption, and that's a full restoration. You see, many are called and few are chosen. 1 in 10. And you know what they would do when it came to Shavuot? Getting everything in the muddle. Counting of the Omer. The counting of the Omer. The first day of the counting of the Omer, on the 16th as it goes into the 17th, they would take him over to the Kidron Valley. They would take him up onto the Mount of Olives, and they would wait until the sun set. And then the priest would say, with this sickle, and they would begin to harvest the standing grain of barley. And they would harvest 10 omers. 10 omers worth of barley. They'd truck it all the way back over the Kidron Valley, over the bridge to the temple. They'd take those 10 omers of barley and they'd begin to sieve them. They'd begin to willow them. And they'd begin to thresh them on the threshing floor. They'd take those 10 omers and they would beat them and beat them and beat them and throw them in the fire and refine and refine. And after 10 omers got beaten, refined, and put through the fire, guess how many omers were left? 1 omer that was fit as a heave offering unto Yahweh. That's our life, brethren. 1 in 10. Many are called, but few are chosen. Because you have to be going through the refiner's fire. We're going to get whooped up, beaten up, and we are going to get broken. And then, that's when we're fit for the King. Fit for the King. And people don't want to do that. They don't want to go through that. They just want to be collected up over there on the Mount of the Olives and stay there happy clappy. Right? My goodness, I tell you. What the brothers did to the son of the father rent his soul. The son didn't die but live, and he ended up bringing salvation and deliverance to all Israel. Oh, it's amazing. The brothers didn't know their father Jacob, did they? They didn't know their father Jacob, because if they knew him, they would have known the pain and the loss that Joseph caused to the father. And that's what you see John talking about in the 8th verse and 19th verse of the 8th chapter. The Jews asked Yeshua, "Where is your Abba?" And Yeshua answered, "You neither know me nor my Abba. If you had known me, you would have known my Abba." You see, the brothers, they didn't know their father Jacob. Because if they knew him, they would have known that the pain of selling his son would have broken him for all those years. That was Jacob's trouble, by the way. That was Jacob's trouble, was all those years of loss of his son. You see, Joseph, Yeshua ben Joseph, comes for who? For the Israel of Eloah, Galatians 6:16. For the 12 tribes of Israel scattered abroad, James 1. Joseph informs us not to waste our time on the ways of the Gentiles, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, Matthew 10 and Matthew 15. Joseph wasn't sent to seek and save that which was lost. Joseph was sent to seek and save that which was lost, which was the 10 tribes, or the wandering Jew. You see, the prophets qualify Israel as that which was lost, a wandering flock that Joseph has to go and seek. But I really want to focus this week, that was my introduction, on the Haftarah. In Yehezkel. Turn with me to Yehezkel. And I was wondering if I was getting a word picture this week, because I'm reading it, studying on it the beginning of the week heavily, and it's about these broken bones that come back together with sinews, and I'm thinking, did I really have to get that ingrained into me very deeply as he's standing before you with a broken bone? Because now I'm really seeing how that could work in Yehezkel chapter 37. And I'm praying for that sinews to come across on these old broken bones here and bring them back together, because I'm looking for that restoration a little bit more than the most of you right now.
Remember to claim that.
I'm telling you. Ezekiel 37 verse 15 though. Let's go to verse 15. Because this is the Haftarah, the corresponding reading to our Torah portion. And of course, it's about the restoration of the house of Israel. And that stick that is coming together is going to be in whose hand? The hand of Joseph. The word of Yahweh came to me saying, moreover, you, Ben Adam, son of man, take one piece of wood. The Hebrew word there is 8. Take one tree. In the Septuagint, it's really interesting. That's translated as radas. Radas. Now, if you remember when we got a little, I got a little weird on you back there in Jacob's flock. What was it that Jacob brought before? He brought those rods, radas, or 8 sticks. And who was it for? The speckled and spotted flock that was cast out into the nations, and he brings them back. Same word there in the Septuagint, radas, as in Jacob's rods, bring forth a speckled and spotted, somewhat in a peculiar way. And write upon him, in some text it says it, but write upon him. For Yehuda and for the children of Israel, his Havarim, his friends. It means to join together or to be coupled like building boards. Remember those building boards that held up the tabernacle? They were coupled together, and that's what you and I are. We are the building boards that are to be raised up, the fallen tabernacle of David, Acts chapter 15. And what holds the building boards together so that they can actually stand together? Unity, restoring around anything, or is it the currency of redemption, silver, that holds the building boards together? That's the only thing that will hold us together, is Yeshua's currency of redemption. Those silver holds the building boards together, and that's what we see. The currency of redemption that called Benjamin Mount, fully restored silver. For us to be fully restored, it's the currency of Yeshua, Joseph's redemption in our lives that will hold us together. So as we continue on now in this text of Ezekiel chapter 37, he says, take another piece of wood and write upon it, for Joseph, the piece of wood of Ephraim, and for all Beit Israel and his Chavarim, and join them one to another into one piece of wood. And they shall become echad in your hand. And when the children of your people shall speak to you, saying, will you not show us what you mean by these? Hang on a minute. The prophet Ezekiel is saying, will you show us what you mean by this? And then, several hundred years later, should we say, along comes Rav Shaliach Shaul to the Ephesians in the 2nd chapter, in the 12th verse, and he says, hey, I'm going to show you what Ezekiel meant in chapter 37, verse 10. Verse 17. Because this is what Paul says, and he explains it exactly. He's not talking about anything else than this piece of text. That at the time you were called without Mashiach, being excluded. You were aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, as gerim from the covenants of promise. You were strangers from the covenants of promise, having no tikva, hope, and without Eloah in the olam hazeh. You were without Yahweh in this world. But now in Mashiach, you know, the one that is going to gather the two sticks into one. Now in Mashiach, Yeshua, you who sometimes were far off, cast away, broken off, and scattered into the nations, you are made near by the dam of Mashiach, the blood of Mashiach. For he is our shalom. He has made both one. The two sticks one. Having abolished, how does he do it? How does he do it? See, people don't want to know how he has to do it, because it's painful. You have to give up your doctrine and your theology. But now in Mashiach, Yeshua, you who are sometimes far off are made near by the blood of Mashiach. For he is our shalom, who has made both echad, one. And he has broken down the middle wall of partition between us, having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the book of the law contained in human dogma, to make himself from the two one renewed man, so making shalom. It's hard to swallow, isn't it? I mean, it really is. That is Ephesians 2:12. The Apostle Paul explaining to the Ephesians exactly how Ezekiel intended the restoration to happen. And that restoration is only true biblical. Ezekiel 37 verse 17, revelation and restoration, if it is around that. Making the two come into one new man. But first there's got to be some abolishing going on. You see, you can't have it the other way round. It is false restoration, John Hagee, and all of the nonsense out there. It's not going to work. It doesn't matter how much lolly you throw at it, it isn't going to work. It's a house of cards and it's coming down. Doesn't matter how much money you throw at it. It's false restoration. And now look what we see in verse 19 of our text. Say to them, the Hebrew there, devar to them, devar to them. Speak the word to them. It's all about being in the word that you can even see this. Because the restoration happens by us digging into the word. Devar to them. Devar to them, this says the Master Yahweh. See, I will take the piece of wood of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, the tribes of Israel, his companions, and will put them with the piece of wood of Yehudah, and make them one piece of wood, and they shall be one in my hand. That's the one new man of Ephesians 2:12. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, bone to bone, stick to stick. Bone to bone, stick to stick. And two pieces of wood on which you write shall be in your hand before their eyes, and say to them, this says the Master Yahweh, see, I will take the children of Israel from among the Gentiles where they have gone, and will gather them on every side. The Hebrew word there for gather is kavatz. Kaf bet zadi, and the Greek word synagogue. synagogue. He's gathering us together as the congregation of Israel.
Amen.
It's amazing. And bring them into their own land. And I will make them one nation, a goy echad, in the land upon the mountains of Israel. And one melech shall be melech over them all. Please hear me. One melech will be melech over half of them. Just those that agree with him? No. One melech will be melech over them all. And they shall no more be two nations, neither shall they be divided again into two malchutim. They will never be divided again into two kingdoms anymore. Neither shall they defile, tamei, make themselves unclean, anymore with their idols or their fetishes, it says. Their fetishes. Nor with their detestable things. Their detestable things, the Hebrew word there is shakats, and the Greek is betaluso, and it comes across to us in Revelation 21 verse 8 as those plagues. They're going to come upon those that just can't put down their detestable things. It's going to happen. You're going to see it. And you're going to witness it. And you want to be far away from that nonsense. But I will save them out of their dwelling places in which they have sinned, and will cleanse them. So they shall be my people and me, and I will be their Elohim. And David my Eved, servant, shall be melech over them, and they shall have one shepherd. They shall also have their halakha, their walk in my mishpatim, my judgments, and observe my chukim, my statutes, and do them. You see, the end time scenario is the same age-old problem. The end time scenario is the same age-old problem. The two houses claiming different kings, serving in different temples over different priesthoods. It's the same old problem, and you and I are stuck slap bang right in the middle of that same old paradigm, and you are going to have to make a decision. Who's your king? Which temple are you going to? And which priesthood are you serving? David versus Absalom. Shiloh versus Jerusalem. Zadok versus Abiathar. Adoniah versus Solomon. Rehoboam versus Jeroboam. Jerusalem versus Tel Dan. Levites versus sons from every class of people. Yeshua versus the anti-Messiah. Antonia Fortress versus the Mount of Olives. And Melchizedek's versus the sons, general sons of Aaron. There's nothing new under the sun. It's everywhere, and you've got to engage. You have to engage and deal with it.
Our yes has to be yes.
Our yes has to be yes. If it's going to be yes, you're going to stand strong. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given to Yaakov my Eved, my servant, in which your Avot, fathers, have dwelt. And they shall dwell in it, they and their children, and their children's children, Leolam Vayed, forever and ever. And my Eved, my servant David, shall be their Nasi, their shepherd, their leader, Leolam Vayed, forever and ever. Moreover, I will make a brit of shalom with them. You see, the only covenant of shalom is for the zeal of thy house. It's priestly. It's what Paul wrote to the Ephesians, to make in himself from the two one renewed man, so making a shalom with them. You see, it shall be an everlasting brit with them, and I will make them and place them and multiply them, and will set my kadosh place in their midst, Leolam Vayed. My dwelling place also shall be with them, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people, and me. verse 28. And the Gentiles shall know that I, Yahweh, will set Israel apart when my kadosh place shall be in their midst. Le'olam va'ed. It's amazing. I'm looking for the reunification. I am looking for the reunification. You see, we all need to be aware, though. We all need to be aware as Yahweh plans the unveiling of Joseph and the reunification of all Israel, the counterfeit Joseph is planning to doing some unveiling and reunification himself. You've got to understand that. You see, we say it's up, they say it's down. We say it's black, they say it's white. As Yahweh is doing the unveiling of Joseph and the reunification, you have got to understand that the counterfeit Joseph is doing some unveiling and reunification for himself. And that's the world and the global world that we live in, that is thrust in front of our face each and every day upon the newspapers and upon the television. You see, right now the elite are scurrying around their ranks as they get ready to present Joseph to the nations. This Joseph, unlike the biblical Joseph, will usher in war, famine, and disease with only two solutions. Two solutions for the false Joseph. One, population reduction, and two, boundary dissolution. Population reduction and boundary dissolution. That is what they're reunifying around their Joseph. And that's what you're going to see. This is what you're seeing in the US right now and across the globe as ISIS breaks through the borders. It's not only happening in America, but it's happening all over the global sphere. Biblical Joseph wore a coat of many colors, not only representing the tribes and the priesthood, but signifying the ethnic diversity of Yahweh's chosen people. So how do you think the counterfeit Joseph could ignite flames of war? How's the counterfeit Joseph going to do it? Racial division, order out of chaos. And that's what they're doing right now. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to fire up that racial division and bring order out of chaos. But the true Joseph, his coat is a multicolored coat showing the ethnic diversity of the tribes of Israel, that is a non-issue. Because if we unite together, no matter what creed, color, or tribe, then we are strong. And the globalists can't have that. They cannot have that. So they keep playing on the same old tracks. And that's what you're seeing coming up in America right now. Look what it says in Deuteronomy 32 verse 8. Because remember I said there's two things that they are doing right now for reunification. What they're looking for, the two solutions to this war and famine that Joseph is bringing about. Number one, population reduction. And number two, boundary dissolution. Let's look at this boundary dissolution. Deuteronomy 32 verse 8. When Elyon divided the nations their inheritance, look what he did. When he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the nations according to the numbers of the sons of Israel. So Yahweh is telling us that the size of the nations of this world are determined about by how many of the sons of Israel live within them. So America is pretty big. Its boundaries are quite large, so that must mean that there are many sons of Israel within its boundaries. So the counterfeit Joseph, of course, is going to be into boundary dissolution. Right? Why? You see, Yahweh has allowed Satan to have dominion. And we know Satan is aware of that scripture that I just read you. So right now, Satan is beginning to stir up each individual nation against itself so that the host nation will hunt out the sons of Israel within its own borders. Jeremiah 16 verse 16. I'm telling you, my goodness, we better have our heads screwed on right. Are you allowed to say that word? Okay. Yeah, I can. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah. See, I will send for many fishers, says Yahweh, and they shall fish them. And after that, if they don't bloody well listen to the fishers, that's the gospel message. We just fish you out of the nations with the good news. But you wouldn't listen, would you? You wouldn't listen to the good news. So then Yahweh says, I will send for many hunters, ISIS, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill and out of the holes of the rocks. Did you see that in Iraq? Do you see that in Syria? Do you see that happening in America? You see, as Yahweh prepares through this trial, the reunification of the tribes, Satan is preemptively reunifying certain nations together in readiness to war against others. But who's the enemy? I mean, who's the enemy? I mean, is it Russia? Because that's what they would like you to think. Let's regurgitate everything from the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. You see, Russia and Persia, they have treaty ties that go back to the early 19th century. You're not going to break and pry Russia and the Persians apart. It's not going to happen. They have got ties that go way back, and their ties are based upon one thing. They partnered against Anglo-imperialism, whether it was the British Crown or whether today it's the American dynasty. Oh, and it is a dynasty. I mean, it is a dynasty. I mean, the elite is readying right now. It's sickening. The elite is readying right now another Clinton-Bush race. Again. How can we even tolerate this? So in over a quarter of a century, we've had two families running the country. I mean, because remember, Obama is the 10th cousin of Bush, okay? So it's two families, it's a dynasty, for crying out loud. I mean,
That's crazy.
yeah. You see, America right now is waging war on Russia, Brazil, China, and South Africa using the petrodollar. And everyone's all gleeful and happy at the pump. All the while, now we've got Obama trying to soothe relations with Cuba. I mean, I wonder why. I mean, can we remember back to 1960 bloody 2? I mean, really? But people can't, because, that was way back. Well, no, it wasn't. You see, because Obama can't afford to have a repeat of 62. So if we're going to go to battle and we're going to create this false flag with Russia, then we better make sure to our southern border, which is being dissolved, that we've got some kind of establishment of treaty or understanding. And it all happens at the same time. We have to make these connections, because Satan's goal is the total destruction of traditional nations and values, overthrowing them with Western aggression. And that's what you're seeing. You see, Putin is actually standing up to Western aggression and the New World Order global dictatorship. He's actually standing up. He's taken his shirt off, he's on his horse, and he's saying, and I could use that word that I wondered whether you. And he is. You see, in Putin's State of the Nation address, this is what he said. Listen, many Euro-Atlantic countries have moved away from their roots, including Christian values. Policies are being pursued that place on the same level multi-child family and same-sex partnership, a faith in God and a belief in Satanism. Now, of course, Putin's reference to Satan is a pointed rebuke of the New World Order, because the New World Order, they push militant secularism whilst all the time being closet Satanists. You see, he knows that. He knows what they do down at Bohemia Grove every year. Yet they're pushing this militant secularism, but they're not militantly secular. They're closet Satanists. And that is exactly Putin's understanding. You see, going back to Obama, you do realize that the globalists sponsored the coup in Indonesia in 1965. That was the New World Order that sponsored the coup in Indonesia in 1965. And where was President Obama? Where was Barry Soetoro in 1965? Was he 5 years old there, living with his father, who was working for the New World Order as an agitator and an instigator to cause a coup, which then, on the backs of him, 1 million Indonesians were slaughtered, and for the reward of that, they take his son and raise him up for the next generation. Good night. But you know what? Why don't we all just read the New York Times and everything will be fine? Oh my goodness. You see, this is what's happening. I mean, call me a conspiracy theorist. I don't know why anyone would do such a dreadful thing. But we've got to understand what happened, the roots of this, and it keeps happening again and again. So what happened in 65, of course, is the Indonesians, they were not bowing to the New World Order. They were not bowing to the New World Order. So what they do then is more than 1 million were killed after the ousting of Sukarno. And Barack Obama was 5 years old, living with his father, who was working for the globalists, who ousted Sukarno, and as he was working as an agitator and as an instigator of hope and change. Hope and change on the backs of millions of Indonesian martyrs. And where do you think this hope and change comes from? We just saw it in Indonesia in 65, for crying out loud. You see, the New World Order uses the same formula again and again and again and again to overthrow legitimate but uncooperative governments. This is the formula that they use. Number one, they sabotage the economy. Number two, they bribe the military and pay for mercenaries to create chaos in the streets. Number three, they incite violence by paying snipers to fire into crowds and set off some bombs, whilst agitators stir up racial division and unrest. Are you seeing that in America? And number four, they send the corrupt military to overthrow the target nation's legitimate leader and murder or imprison his supporters. You see that? And finally, number five, they install a New World Order puppet in his place and announce order has come from all of the chaos. That's geopoliticals layered with the Bible. And it's a crazy world that we live in. It really is. You see, our only hope is the Aleph Tav signature salvation covenant. That's our only hope. Our only hope is the Aleph Tav signature salvation covenant. And it only appears in two places. in the whole of the scripture. The only way we are going to be safely enveloped, safely enclosed, is within the 12 Aleph Tav signature salvation. Because this covenant is only to who? James 1. The 12 tribes that were scattered abroad. This covenant is only to those who restore with authentic restoration around Yeshua, the son of Joseph. This is the only covenant, this is the only hope. Otherwise, you are going to face hell and fury and the denigration and degrading of the nations. And you have got to be ready, because these borders are being dissolved and this population is going to be reduced. And you have got to come into the covenant of safety, the two places that it is found in Scripture. Genesis chapter 15, of course, the weight. Abraham and the covenant between the pieces, we find the 12 instances of the Aleph Tav. This is the conditional arm of the Melchizedek covenant. And Yahweh says, fear not. Fear not, little children. Fear not, Avram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward. You see, the Aleph Tav, and this is it. This is always it. This is always it, and always been my heart. He is our shield. He is our shield. He is our protection from deceit. He is our protection from deception. And his covenant is our great reward. And the second place that this covenant of the 12th Aleph Tav signature salvation is mentioned is in Bereshit, Genesis chapter 44 and verse 18, our Torah portion text. Then Yehuda came near to him and said, "Oh, my master, please, please let your Eved, your servant, speak a word in my master's ears, and let not your anger burn against your Eved, for even you are as Pharaoh." Within this text, we have the 12 Aleph Tav signature of the covenant that was first mentioned in Bereshit chapter 15. You see, the Melchizedek covenant can only be brought about by the revealing of Joseph and his Melchizedek signature of security. The 12 Aleph Tavs bookend the revelation of Melchizedek Joseph. One bookend is in Genesis 15, the other bookend is in Genesis 44, and that's our only hope. But within that hope is security, defense, and a shield of protection, and a great reward. So as I see all of these things coming down the line, as I look at the reunification that Yahweh is doing, it's a true reunification based upon the Melchizedek signature covenant of the 12 Aleph Tavs, brought forth and birthed in Genesis 15 and the solidified bookend in Genesis 44:18. At the reunification, Ezekiel 37:15, of the whole house of Israel around one king, one temple, and one priesthood. Not the age-old problem where Israel is always fighting against which king they're going to serve, which priest they're going to serve, and where they're going to go for worship. As for me and my house, I choose Yeshua is king. Melchizedek, the sons of Zadok, the Eliezer line is the legitimate Melchizedek line. And as for me and my house, we shall go outside of the gate, where they that attend the altar have no right to eat. up on the Mount of Olives, because this is going to be my defense, my shield, your shield, and our pleasant and great reward when these nations and the false Joseph come up for the dissolution and population reduction. And it will be an instantaneous change as Yeshua reveals the Melchizedek covenant to you, and as the false Joseph reveals his plans to the world. Instantaneous change, just like it was in Indonesia in 65. And you wonder why Barack Obama is president. There's nothing that isn't done without cost and reward, and his father paid the price, and he did what he needed to do to oust and begin that coup in 65 in Indonesia, and the reward was the raising up of the next one that would do the final work of the revealing of the false Joseph. Beware, brethren. Beware and be ready. And we are victorious because he is our shield and our great reward. Amen? Come on forward, brother, and give us some paleo. Some thoughts on the paleo. You have anything for us? I know you do. I mean, I put you on the spot, but... Or maybe not. But we can have any questions, comments at all. Yes?
I had something. You see a lot of people who are using this verse as in Ezekiel 37, 25, and said, "Then they shall dwell in the land and have given them to Jacob, my servant, where you and your fathers dwelt, and they shall dwell there and their children and their children's children forever, and my servant David, their prince forever." And when I looked that up in the Hebrew, it's Leolam, but they didn't put the Vayed in there after that part. So a lot of people are saying that David's going to be their king, and he's going to be the one doing all this stuff, not Yeshua. But when you look into the Hebrew, it actually says the Leolam just means for a time undetermined. Like he's not specifying an end to that time, but he's saying it's a time undetermined. But when you look into the other portions like below there, it says, "My sanctuary in my midst forevermore." That's Leolam Vayed. So he's saying forever and ever. So it's interesting that there's a time frame put on this forever, because it's just a time undetermined. It's not saying that David's going to be the king forever and ever and ever.
Yeah, and we have to understand too that many of these Bible translators, they're inheriting the midrashim from the Jews that can't allow Ezekiel 37 to be speaking of Melchizedek, the Ben Yosef. So they have to reinterpret Ezekiel 37 in light of their Masoretic paradigm.
Right.
Of course, yes.
We've inherited lies.
It's an online question. Why do you refer to Satan as Satan?
Why do I refer to Satan as Satan? Well, it goes back to my rabbinical days, and it was a joke with the rabbis that just kind of stuck with me, and that was that Yahweh has had his name removed from the scriptures and replaced with the title of a British landowner close to 7,000 times. The Yod He Vav He has been replaced and with Lord close to 7,000 times. Yet, Satan, or Satan's name, is perfectly there in all translations across all languages, perfectly there. It's only Yahweh's name that was changed, hidden. So the rabbis figured that if he's going to mess with Yahweh's name, we were just going to mess with his name. Then S-A, instead of pronouncing his name, S.A. was going to get his derriere tanned in the lake of fire. And it kind of stuck because we all used to use it and it's funny. So if he's going to mess with Yahweh's name, and not pronounce it. We're going to mess with his name and not pronounce it because he's going to get his S.A. tanned in the lake of fire. Very theological, is it not?
Yes, but how do we know that that's his real name?
Oh. Hasatan. I prefer S period, A period, tan. See, I tell you, it's been a blessing, this journey that I've been on. I've met some really fascinating people over the years, and some of this stuff just, I tell you, it's amazing to me, amazing.
You're going to get a call from Bonnie Judah. Is it on the table?
No, it's okay. Because what?